Imagine a world where that veil between what we know and, well, the unseen, it's thin, where ancient wisdom kind of whispers from these forgotten places, and where your identity, your very essence, is woven into the land you call home. Now, this isn't just some, romantic idea from the history books. It's a living thing, a tapestry of tradition, rebellion, even profound personal transformation. So today, we're diving deep, really deep, into Serpent Songs, which is this incredible curated collection of insights, traditional witchcraft, folk magic, esoteric practices from all over, really.
Yeah, and our mission here really is to try and distill that core wisdom from all these diverse sources. We want to uncover those connections, sometimes surprising ones, and show how these ancient currents, they're still flowing, still adapting, even in our very sort of material world. We want to help you understand not just what these practices are, but, why they've persisted, why they still matter so much to people today.
Get ready, then. We're going to explore everything, from the real earthy wisdom of Cornish cunning folk and the deep power you find in Basque house spirits, to the very practical magic of Nordic sorcery. And even that radical journey of self-deification, it's a blend, historical, mystical, practical. And I promise you, this is where it gets really interesting.
The witch's world, liminality, spirits, and kinship.
Okay, so let's start our deep dive into Serpent Songs in some very specific places, maybe even unsettling places, these liminal spaces that witches are said to call home. So how do these sources define these between places, and why are they just so crucial for these practitioners?
That's a great place to start, actually, because it really sets the stage. The sources really emphasize this. These aren't just any locations. They're the between places. Thresholds, where one world kind of bleeds into the next. For the Cornish witch, for example, there's this deep tradition, instinctive almost, seeking out very specific sites. Think crossroads, obvious symbolism there, right? Junctions, convergence, where paths meet, spirits might gather.
Right. Crossroads are classic.
Exactly. Or churchyards, places where the living and the dead are, well, uncomfortably close sometimes. Then you have the natural markers, lonely thorns twisted by the wind, like sentinels, potent stones, witnesses to who knows how much time. Holy wells, seen as literal gateways to the fairy realm sometimes, and hills touching the sky, caves burrowing into the earth. Sea caves, land caves, wooded valleys, streams, described almost like channels of spirit force, where unseen energies just flow. The core idea here, power isn't in the man-made stuff or cultivated spaces. It's at the raw edges, the boundaries, where the mundane just dissolves and the real potential waits.
So it's not about finding a convenient spot or a comfortable one. It's deliberately seeking out those energetic intersections. But what's the purpose? Why go to these liminal places? What are they hoping to find or achieve?
Yeah, that's the crucial thing. These aren't just pretty backdrops for a ritual. The journey itself is deeply intentional, the main reason. It's about encountering the virtues and wisdoms of the other, communing, getting teaching, guidance, directly from spirits, from the fairies. It's in these zones, these wild in-between places, that the telluric serpent is drawn forth. Now, that's not a literal snake. It represents this powerful primal earth energy.
Okay, the telluric serpent.
Right. Described as intoxicating, bringing visions, power, directly to the witch. It suggests this direct, almost physical interaction with the raw energy of the land, something beyond just thinking about it.
I love how the analysis in the sources puts it. It says the wild and lonely place calls to the witch and is her true home. It's not just liking the scenery, it's fundamental, a homecoming almost. The earth, it says, is of her bones and the bones of her ancestors, like literally embedded in the ground. And that within the witch blood, there's this deep, conic and animalistic wild wisdom, Gary. Something that needs to be realized, fed, nurtured through the craft. It's this primal link. The land itself is the source of power, of insight. Take the hedge, for instance, or old stone styles. They even look liminal, don't they? You can picture it. A Cornish witch at dusk settling on an old style, drawing on the energies, the visions of these spirit paths. Maybe waiting for a spirit to pass by offers some wisdom. And it's from the hedge, too, that they might get actual gifts, tools, herbs, things to empower their practice.
It really is a stark contrast to modern life, isn't it? I mean, think about our cities, often so brightly lit. There's this deep, almost aversion to the night, to the other. You see it in the demand for artificial light. That loud exuberance of urban nightlife almost feels like a ritual itself, like a desperate attempt to banish the natural darkness. What's fascinating here is how these old traditions just fundamentally embrace what society often tries to push away, finding power, finding wisdom in the very darkness and mystery we avoid. It's a total reorientation.
Okay, so building on that embrace of the liminal, The sources also talk a lot about kinship with the other,
Mm-hmm.
especially animal familiars. What's the nature of that kinship? What role do these familiars play?
Well, it's much deeper than just having a pet. The sources are explicit. These animal familiars are themselves liminal in nature and character, meaning they share that fundamental state of being with the witch. They exist on the threshold, too. It's like a shared frequency, maybe. Something beyond just companionship. A deeper, energetic bond, often telepathic, it's suggested.
And inside the witch's circle, you find these powerful symbols. Skulls, bones, human or animal. They're described as emblematic of both the stripping of self and exchange with the world of spirit.
Huh.
These flensed bones stripped clean, right, are placed in the north of the circle. Why the north, specifically?
The north is seen as the dark portal of spirit, wisdom, divination, and whisperings on the wind. So these bones placed there become mediating vessels. For spirits, presences, the virtues of the other, it's almost like they get Eve refleshed, but not with physical tissue, with spirit presence, with power, within the ritual, and a flame lit in the north. It's not just for light, it's for illumination of the flow of the otherworldly, for spirit presences, gnosis, shining light on the unmanifest, unknown, and hidden. It's also described as a flame of devotion to the other, an offering to these spirit allies.
This connection goes beyond the physical and animal, too, right?
Yeah.
Into this idea of spiritual ancestry.
Yeah.
Which is fascinating.
Absolutely. It transcends bloodlines completely. The idea of spiritual ancestors isn't about your literal grandparents. It's about late teachers and their teachers. It forms this vital lineage, knowledge, practice, passed down through shared understanding. Through initiation, there's a really compelling personal story in the sources about this. Someone learning about their teacher's teacher, Sean, who initially seems sort of shadowy and unreal,
Right.
but then finding out he was real, factual.
Yeah.
It creates this tangible sense of connection to a broader spiritual line, one you might not see on the surface.
So it's definitely more than just mentoring. It's like a spiritual inheritance. And in many types of traditional craft, initiation isn't just joining a group, it's being adopted into a family.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why they often talk about clans, not covens.
Exactly. And that adoption gives the initiate direct access to the ancestral spirits, the tutelary spirits of that specific tradition or stream. These spirits, along with the collective ancestors, they all contribute to the egregore, which is basically the group mind, the collective spiritual entity of the clan, a shared identity that goes beyond individuals, like an energetic blueprint for the whole group.
The sources also mention something interesting about agreeing on how spirits look, like Roy Bowers imposing a form for Hermes.
Yeah, that might seem like a small detail, but it's presented as crucial. If a group can agree on the appearance or nature of the spirits or gods they work with, it helps the egregore develop properly. It creates coherence, a shared understanding for interacting with those forces. It does raise a big question for us, doesn't it? In our world, family often means immediate blood relatives. Identity is often tied to individual stuff. So what might it mean for you to consciously cultivate a spiritual lineage, to actually choose your clan based on shared purpose, and to realize your identity can be shaped by, well, by the spirits and the collective mind of your chosen tradition? It pushes you to think about family and belonging in a much bigger, more intentional way.
The enduring power of the house in Basque tradition.
That idea of a chosen spiritual family is really powerful, and it leads us nicely into the next section, which is even more grounded in home and belonging. We're shifting from those broader liminal spaces to the Basque tradition, where the ix, the house, takes on this incredible, almost sacred meaning. So how does the Basque edex go beyond just being a building?
Oh, it's presented as so much more than just a physical place to live. It's described as a named, living entity, the true temple of the land, deeply rooted in Modezaharak, the old ways. So this isn't just a structure, it's alive. With history, memory, spirit, its role is incredibly multifaceted. It's an intersection of land and shelter, sustenance and solace, temple and tomb, the living and the dead. That description really captures it all. It fosters this community of reciprocity that goes beyond individuals. It stretches across generations, past, present, future, all held within its walls.
And it's not just poetic language either. There's that alchemical metaphor mentioned, which is really interesting. How does that work?
Yeah, it shows the depth of their understanding, doesn't it? The etxe is seen through this alchemical lens. 3 principles: salt, sulfur, mercury. The physical house itself, that's the salt. The stable foundation, the land it sits on, that's the sulfur. The dynamic, life-giving essence, the soul of the place, And the inhabitants, they're the Mercury, the adaptable conscious spirit giving the house its current life, its purpose. It's a layered view, highlighting its depth, its sacred geometry, its connection to natural forces.
What's really unique, almost startling, is how identity in Basque tradition is tied to the house, not the person. The name of the ex, like Exiberia, New House, or Zubiondo by the bridge, is more important than the inhabitants' names. If you move in, you become the house's name.
Exactly. And that extends even to adopting new members into the family's ways in a craft context. Identity is absorbed from the dwelling itself. Even the dead of the house are the responsibility of the current owners. It extends the fire of the house to all its inhabitants, living and dead. It really blurs those lines between past and present, physical and spiritual. It certainly challenges our modern, often very transient relationship with where we live. Suggests a much deeper, almost symbiotic bond. And this whole institution of the ex, it's shown as absolutely vital for preserving traditional Basque ways, for protecting their language, Iskra, against political pressures, attempts to erase their culture. There's that powerful quote, outside the house, the ways of the outside prevail. Inside the house, inside the temple, we are ourselves. That says it all, really. The ex is a sanctuary, a cultural anchor, a statement about resilience through rootedness.
So if the X is this living temple, what's its heart? The sources point to the hearth fire, the subaster. What makes the hearth so central?
The subaster, the hearth fire, is the absolute seat of power. Specifically in the kitchen, the sukaldia. This isn't just about warmth or cooking. It's seen as the dwelling place of the spirit of Mari, who is the numen of the land, the ultimate earth deity. It's the very heart of the house, alive with her presence, embodying her essence. And Mari, through that hearth, demands honesty, responsibility, sharing, reflecting the upright character needed, and the nature of fire itself, purifying, demanding. The hearth fire protects by its very presence, guaranteeing the sacredness and authority of the excess. It lifts a practical thing into something deeply spiritual.
And the protection goes beyond just the flame, right? What other protections are woven into the ekkas?
Oh, absolutely. The front door, the 8, is traditionally stained. Ochre, oil, ox blood. Not just for looks. For protection, vitalization. It echoes the mighty red bull Exigori, a fierce defender of Mari's ways, guarding the threshold. And various plants, tools. They're used to harness Ador magical force and Indar strength. Thorn branches for fertility, ash for strength, the wild thistle flower, Igus Kiloria, to ward off harm. Planting walnut and laurel trees for protection against lightning, curses. An axe by the door as a charm against storms. These are tangible things, embedding magical intent right into the physical structure and surroundings.
And maintaining that hearth fire isn't casual either. It's ritualistic.
Deeply so. It has to be cared for respectfully, by an older woman usually, and lit according to tradition. Food prepared there extends a communion of flame to everyone. Even scraps are left for the house dead. This constant daily care reinforces the bond between living, dead, and the spirit of the house itself.
What's really thought-provoking, though, is that question the sources pose. Where does the etxe truly begin and end? Is not the fire kindled in the heart of each person? Suggesting an internal etxe within each of us, mirroring the external one, shaping identity from the inside out.
Yes. That concept of the house as a living, protective entity, maintained through ritual, through the character of the people living there, it's such a powerful contrast to modern transient life. It speaks to that deep human need for roots, for meaning in our spaces, for connection to past and future. It's a holistic view of home, something many of us might find really resonant. A reminder that home can be so much more than just walls.
That deep connection to place and ancestry flows right into the Basque spiritual world. And this pantheon is so different from, what pop culture tells us about witchcraft. It's not about good versus evil and a rebellion against Christianity. It's about ancient wisdom, natural cycles, making your own fate. Let's dive into these deities. Starting with Mari. She seems central.
Oh, she's the linchpin, absolutely. Mari is the animator of cosmos and creation, the prime mover. She's not a demoness, despite what some anthropologists might have mislabeled her. She's the merging of opposites, or rather their origin, embodying destruction and becoming. She lives in caves across the Pyrenees, as a Lindy or Kiola, a Mescata or Zoko, but she's also, by her nature, everywhere, pervasive, universal. Her manifestations are incredibly varied. Fiery trees, vultures, fire serpents, a woman dripping fire, riding a pig or ram. These aren't just random shapes, they show her richness, her fluidity, a deity defying one single form, showing her ultimate power. She also has these deep cosmic links. Loves thunder, storms, Odei, storm spirits, and Etsai, lightning, are dear to her. often seen emerging with her from the caves.
Sounds like she really embodies the raw, untamed forces of nature. Who else is in the spiritual world? What's their link to Mari?
Well, there's Acherbelts, the black goat of the Sabbath, described as Mary's lover and son. He's a powerful masculine symbol. Fertility, strength, protection. He mediates between Elargi, moon, and Oguski, sun. And the Pellar, the celebration and the feel of the goat, is not some dark ritual like in the movies. It's a celebration of Adur, which means repose, contemplation. It's a Sabbath of dream spirit, a living sacrifice, a soothing of the worlds, binding moon to sun, bringing ecstasy, joy, hope. It's about veneration, communion with elemental forces, celebrating them, not fearing them.
Okay, and then there's Etsai. The name means enemy, which sounds, well, ominous. How does he fit in?
Etsai is fascinating and, yeah, often misunderstood. The name means enemy or opposer. And with Christianity, he was demonized, syncretized with the Christian devil, kicks me. But for Basque practitioners, he's emphatically not some beautiful rebel angel like Milton's Satan. He's more like the image of God reflected in the mandrake as it lights up the cave in memory and dreams. He's ancient, almost as old as God, representing something forgotten, namely wisdom. He walks with spirits of night storms, Odei, dream amets, night gueco, embodies these primal forces. He's also one of Mari's key powers for punishing oathbreakers, upholding the strict truthfulness of the Modasharak, the old ways. He comes out of caves as a snake, bull, horse, pig, usually red, watches the world, visits kids, or makes love with Mari to infuse all being with forgotten light. Mari even gave him her first human children, Atarabai and Nicholaj, to teach them the wisdom of the world. So he's a teacher of deep, often challenging truths.
It's amazing how these figures just defy easy labels like good or evil. And finally, what about the practitioners themselves, the Sorjan?
The Sorjan, literally fate maker, are key. Their way is about upholding the order of the world under the moon. They're deeply connected to Gaweko, night, and Elargi, moon. That's their true home, their X. A Sorjan is someone who makes their own fate, from Zori, fate in a jinn, to make. Someone who consciously chooses how they live, actively shapes their destiny. And that independence, it's protected, empowered by the etxe. Reinforcing the house as this bastion of personal and cultural freedom, it really shows how personal agency, self-determination, and understanding natural cycles are all woven together in their practice.
Evolution and persistence of folk magic.
You know, seeing how traditions like the Basque one adapt really highlights something crucial. Beliefs aren't static. What's fascinating now is how massive shifts, like the English Reformation, didn't kill off belief in magic. Instead, they created this vacuum. Cunning folk stepped in, evolved their practices. It raises that question. How do our beliefs and the social roles supporting them adapt when the world changes drastically? Let's look at those post-Reformation English cunning folk.
That's a key point. The Reformation, 1530s to 1560s, it abolished the church's minor orders, including the exorcist. What kind of gap did that leave, especially in rural areas, and what did those church exorcists actually do?
It left a huge gap. The exorcists performed a vital social and medical function, especially out in the countryside where formal health care was scarce or non-existent. Suddenly, these relatively educated people who'd operated under the church were unemployed. And the need only got worse after the Civil War, 1642-51, and the plagues, killing maybe a quarter of the population. That period saw this massive surge in hysteria and superstitious beliefs. Understandably, maybe. Historically, the exorcist's job was broad. They dealt with maleficium, harmful magic, and demonic possession, which often covered what we now call mental illness. They also used basic herbal remedies, nursing care, and their exorcisms. Probably had a strong placebo effect, offered comfort, perceived solutions in scary times. Early English magic often blamed disease on elf shot, arrows from mischievous elves. Shows how common belief in unseen forces was.
Okay, so the church steps back, and this creates an opening. For a new kind of practitioner, how were these new cunning men different? What methods, what tools did they use?
Well, the earlier church exorcist often relied on compelling demons using words of power, the names of God. Think Testament of Solomon, King Solomon, using a ring to command demons, that kind of authoritative tradition. But with the church no longer overseeing the role directly, this new breed of cunning men emerged. They weren't bound by church rules anymore, so they could incorporate new and uncanonical methods. This meant they could still aid the afflicted, but also potentially conjure evil spirits to do harm. There's that case of Hartley in 1597, hanged for allegedly making a circle to hurt people. It highlights the dual nature of their craft. Healers, protectors, but potentially wielders of harmful magic too.
And what about tangible tools? What did they use?
One common tool was the witch bottle. Joseph Blagrave described it in 1671. believed to trap and neutralize harmful magic aimed at someone or their home. Charms often involve spitting, too, as an antidote against all that is poisonous or diabolical. Simple, but seen as potent, physically expelling bad stuff. What's really insightful, though, is the point the sources make. Cunning craft and the church cannot be seen as separate, but often share the same root, despite later attempts to separate them. It suggests a much more intertwined history than we might think. Folk practices evolving from or alongside church ones, drawing from the same well of belief.
That idea of deep connections, like with the Basque etxe, really makes you wonder about resilience. What happens when culture tries to stamp out older traditions? The sources show something fascinating with the Cornish Pellar cult revival, how a seemingly degraded deity gets reclaimed. So the Pellar cult seemed to fade away. Why, and how did it come back, paradoxically?
Yet, the Pellar cult and other local magical traditions in Cornwall, they did seem to fade in the 20th century, mostly due to big social changes. Urbanization, industry changing everything, plus the rise of these new, more, articulate magical movements, spiritualism, theosophy, Western mystery traditions, eventually Wicca. That captured people's interest, offered new frameworks.
But then something changed. How did the revival start? Especially if it came from the very groups that seemed to replace it.
That's the fascinating twist, isn't it?
Yeah.
The revival actually came from those same camps.
Yeah.
Early interest came from folklorists preserving the lore. William Pater, Cecil Williamson, founder of the Museum of Witchcraft down there. But the first wave of actually practicing it again sprang from a surprising place. The surrealist art scene, people like Ithel Colquhoun, Peter Redgrove, Tony Doc Shields. This artistic interest met a growing general interest in Celticism, earth mysteries. It created fertile ground for these old practices to resurface, seen as authentic local magic.
And it wasn't really until the 90s that this old craft revival properly took off, with Andrew D. Chumbley setting the direction. What was his vision, and what about this Cornish deity, the Bucca?
Chumbley's vision was really influential. He aimed for the reification and enfleshment, making real and tangible of the regional manifestations of the traditional craft, in all their unique glory. Unlike someone like Gardner, maybe, who created a more unified Wicca, Chumbley celebrated the local flavors, specific deities, specific practices. He specifically envisioned reviving the Pellar cult under the guidance of the Bucca, an ancient Cornish divinity who, much like Etsai in the Basque stories, had been misunderstood and degraded over time.
The Bucca sounds like a perfect example of that. A deity deliberately put down by a dominant religion, then reclaimed. Who or what was the Bucca?
He's a really intriguing figure. Christianity tried to degrade him, right? Called him bogey, puck, puka, even just disreputable devils, tried to strip his power. Yet historically, fishermen worshipped him, left part of their catch for him, acknowledged his ancient power over the sea. Legends surround him, said to come from Paul Hill via Bucca's Pass, a specific place. The Fairy of Tolkarn, described as puck-like, going back to Phoenician times, living in rock, could even reveal past lives if you knew the incantation. What's really compelling is the link to Cain, the archetypal wanderer, beloved by Gnostics, sabbatic witches. In old Cornish plays from 1611, the Buccanos Bucca of the night is directly linked to Cain, connecting this ancient spirit to that whole lineage of rebellious wisdom seekers.
And crucially, he's not just presented as some crude goat god or devil pleaser. How do the Pellars see his gnosis, his knowledge?
Right. The sources are clear. Not a crude goat god. He's an older, earlier primordial sun, the son of Helios the Titan, transforming into Bucca-Du and the Bucca-Gwyn, light, showing his dual nature, power over day and night, life and death. For Pellars, his gnosis, his unique spiritual knowledge, is about a profound awakening of the soul to its true divine nature. There's that great story encapsulating this, the place named Bucca, near Truro. People thought it meant haunted house, but an old Cornishman corrected it, said it meant house of the spirit, adding, and that's what we are, a house of the spirit. That perfectly captures the revival spirit, doesn't it? Reclaiming those ancient meanings embedded in the land and the deities, seeing them not as scary, but as reflections of inner truth, divine potential.
Okay, from those ancient Cornish rites, let's travel north now, to the practical, precise magic of Nordic Trolldom. Expert, where did people learn this kind of folk magic? What were the sources?
Trolldom, Nordic folk magic, was mainly learned from old-fashioned svartkonst books, literally black art books.
Yeah.
These were usually handwritten collections, spells, remedies, procedures, sometimes anatomical diagrams, even astronomical charts. The oldest known one, the Norwegian Vinjeboka, dates right back to 1480, shows its long history. But this written tradition was always being added to, enriched by stuff passed down orally, making sure it stayed alive, adapted through generations.
A mix of written and spoken knowledge, then. A core idea in Trolldom seems to be taida. Can you explain that? And why it's so important, especially for divination?
Yes, taida is really central. It refers to the meaning contained in an event, a material, a person, etc., as a power. These taidor plural are defined, enhanced by spoken words and actions. The sources really stress that speaking out loud during spodum divination is very risky, because you could accidentally create an offered spodum, a bad fate, by enhancing the wrong taidor, negatively affecting the future. It shows the huge power they attribute to spoken words, and the extremely careful approach needed in magic. You don't just chat, you shape reality.
Wow, that's a serious warning about speaking carelessly. So, when doing spodum, divination, what's the first step? How do they interact with the unseen?
The first step in spodum is always to check the client's relationship with the spirits around them, asking, how do the local spirits feel about these people? Why weren't they protected? The sources note this is often predictable because, frankly, most people neither know nor care about the spirits that surround them. A common method is calling the spirits and asking their opinion in a low tone of voice. Shows that direct, subtle kind of communication, a quiet negotiation with the land's unseen forces.
The level of detail here is incredible. It's not about grand gestures, is it? It's specific, practical, often subtle stuff. What really stands out is how crucial the client's behavior and beliefs seem to be. What are some of these strict ritual rules? And why are they so fundamental?
Oh, the protocols are remarkably strict, and for good reason. They're designed specifically to control the taidor and focus the power of belief, emotion, and concentration of everyone involved. Clients get critical instructions. Turn off phones. Close all windows and doors, nobody in or out except the practitioner until it's done. Absolute silence once a sign is given, no matter what happens, and they mustn't talk about it until after a good night's sleep. These rules are called fundamental in Trolldom, emphasizes the practitioner's control over the space and the client's vital role in maintaining it through discipline, focus. It's a real team effort between seen and unseen, physical and psychological.
Let's look at some specific rituals. Can you walk us through smurging, the anointing or washing one?
Sure. For smurging, anointing, or washing, the client first takes a sip of grain alcohol, then spits it back into a glass, sometimes with a quiet troll formula, a charm. The practitioner collects graveyard dirt from spirits willing to draw bad stuff into the grave or act as protectors. This dirt pouch gets dipped into an alcohol water mix, stirred counterclockwise with the practitioner's left ring finger. Then the client is washed crosswise, left head to right foot, right head to left foot, then the back. Then 3 times counterclockwise around each limb. All the while, a troll formula is spoken quietly, its power adjusting to any resistance felt. Rucka, or smoking, is similar, using smoke for purification, influence, protection. Every single movement has intent.
And what's the goal of these complex actions, especially when sending back negative stuff?
Well, the sending back aspect is interesting. Practitioners rarely tell clients that the procedure is about sending things back and hitting the people who sent it. It's usually not about causing physical harm, more about making the sender's spirit know what happened, understand the spiritual consequences. This realization, this gnosis, often makes them avoid the behavior causing the fall, or just behave better in the future. So it's about changing behavior through spiritual feedback, not just revenge. Another powerful one is stemma, imprinting or calling to court. Used to stop or move people, animals, even blood in the veins. Can keep out bad influences, criminals, wolves, bears, or draw in luck. The practitioner climbs up on this gray block at a crossroads to make an imprint, ensuring everything that comes within hearing distance should be affected. The name stemma comes from being called to the ting, the old assembly or court. It implies a powerful summons, a spiritual decree.
Even household protectors are part of this practical magic. It's really woven into daily life. How does that work? And what about the places where this happens?
For house protection, a small stone where the new tomic house spirit or protector attaches itself is put behind the stove. Clients get clear rules. Offer beer and porridge every Christmas. Warning, forgetting brings trouble. If they move, they have to ask if the protector wants to come along. Now, protector might not fully capture the tomtit's nature, but it ensures the client stays committed. What's striking is how the sources insist powerful magic can happen anywhere, even shabby-looking red brick walls or tarnished and worn-down gray tarmac of suburban crossroads. As long as people have traveled here for quite a few years, which mean that so do the spirits of the dead and God knows what other unseen things, it's a viable spot. There's that anecdote about the Chinese lady sensing something else took place, despite the ordinary setting. Reinforces that the sacred isn't just in ancient grand places, it permeates the everyday.
And a very practical question, what about payment for trolldom? Why are the fees often substantial?
Traditionally, the fees were quite substantial. And it's not just about getting paid. The substantial fee is explicitly believed to add to the value of what has been done, and thus it will reinforce the strength of it all through the couple's beliefs. It underscores how belief, financial commitment, and the perceived effectiveness of the magic are all intertwined. The fee itself becomes part of the working, a holistic system where everything contributes.
Deeper philosophical currents and transformation?
Okay, that really digs into the practical side of folk magic. But what about the philosophy underneath it all? Expert, if we zoom out, some of these ideas really challenge our usual notions of free will, destiny, suggesting maybe external choice is illusory, but deep internal awareness lets us align with, maybe even shape, our wired. Let's explore the spirit of true blood and this idea of the uncreated absolute. The text tries to describe something ultimate, almost beyond words. How does it handle that?
It really does grapple with the ineffable. It uses these grand terms, the uncreated, bornless, eternal, undiminishing, all-generating, unlimiting, absolute, sentient, ambivalent, multiverse of being. But then immediately says description fails utterly, because words, images, they're limited, finite. That acknowledgement of inadequacy, that inability to fully grasp it with our minds is central. It recognizes the limits of concepts.
But despite that, the sources say all life, material and non-material, comes from this single origin, the uncreated absolute. What we see is the grand pantheonic narrative. All the myths, gods, goddesses, is just a cultural veneer over this single truth. That's a pretty profound statement about underlying unity, isn't it? Suggesting all spiritual paths tap into the same source underneath the stories.
And that leads into the concept of word, which is explored not just as fixed fate, but as the overcoming of fate. It's tied to orlog, one's duty to law, a cosmic law, not just human rules. This word gets personalized through ancestral family names. It becomes this impalpable ambivalence, closer and higher even than the ultimate creatrix. A nebulous expression that gets intimately personalized through specific family spirits of ancestral links in time, suggests this deep personal link to a larger weave of destiny and duty, where your actions within your lineage can influence, maybe even overcome, a seemingly set path.
And the craft itself, in this view, explicitly rejects labels. All labels stifle growth, it says. It's presented as spiritual alchemy masterfully born in the crafting of matter, focused on transformation inside and out. Importantly, not engrossed in material thaumaturgy or maleficent acts. The egregore, those guiding spiritual forces, is described as the intrinsic cellular wellspring of regeneration, highlighting its role in ongoing spiritual renewal, not just a static group mind.
This philosophy also tackles free will and change provocatively. The sources suggest our usual idea of choice is an illusory reassurance, protecting the ego from accepting its subject to something bigger. The author states all is meant to be, and change is inevitable. It points towards this profound acceptance of a cosmic flow, where maybe individual effort is more about aligning with that flow, understanding its unfolding, than fighting it or imposing our will, finding freedom and acceptance.
And finally, communication within this framework values language and vision differently. Language is easily a device of ambiguity, so direct address is oft preferred. Less room for doubt when conveying deep truths. Vision must be sincere and without guile or artifice, pure intent and inner sight. But the word needs to be delivered with all the subtle and noble arts of rhetoric. Meaning, while directness is key, how you convey these truths, especially to the uninitiated, requires skill, art, careful intention. That difference between inner sincerity and outward skill for a purpose. Interesting. But what if that self-renewal goes even further? To the point of radical self-transformation. Let's unpack a tradition that takes personal divinity right to the core. Stregoneria, often called a Roman furnace tradition. Expert, how is Lucifer seen in Stregoneria? And what's the radical ethos of the Stregon, the practitioner?
In Stregoneria, Lucifer isn't the Christian devil at all. He's seen as a cosmic principle, an epitaph for any deity that gifts an increase of consciousness or light. He's not God's opposite. He's an impulse, a constant explosion of light. Metaphorically called the Sol Niger, the black sun, that alchemical symbol for the dark catalyst, the unlit potential driving inner change. This Lucifer represents a particular form of consciousness that dances across matter, a dynamic, evolving force.
So what does that mean for the individual practitioner, the Stregon? How do they approach their own spirituality?
The Stregone's ethos is stark, fiercely independent. A Stregon will never kneel to any god unless he or she kneels to their own reflection. And that's done in reverence, respect, never worship, because worship, in their view, means resigning your fate, your light, and your fire to someone else, which is anathema, completely against the ethos. Their path is one of spiritual freedom and deification, a hermetic discipline of sorcery, needing intuition, knowledge, awareness of need, and fire. It's not about violence against the world, it's about unveiling the secrets nature holds so they can be used for the Strigone's benefit. As a social actor, and as a god in the making, it's a journey of intense inner transformation, aligning with your own inner divinity, not submitting to an external one.
So self-deification is the absolute center here. How do they view the human being in this process of becoming divine?
Absolutely central. Humans are seen as composed of myriads of particles of consciousness, literally legion, which opens up this endless plethora of possibilities in our self-deification. So the only rituals worth doing are those calling on gods of belonging that fit with our consciousness, a consciousness ruled by need and instinct. It empowers the individual to actively shape their transformation, choosing spiritual allies based on inner resonance, not dogma.
And the sources even point out significant gaps in the Bible, in their mythology. What's Lilith's role here?
That's right. They deliberately highlight those gaps, especially in Genesis, to argue for the predominance of Lilith. Lilith is seen as a cosmic manifestation of the spirit of Earth, who transformed herself so she could move better in the world of her choosing. She becomes this powerful mirror for the Strigone's own self-deification, embodying the principle. As Lilith achieved this, then it can be done again. Provides a mythic blueprint for individual spiritual transformation, a testament to the possibility of radical self-creation.
And radically, Strigaria emphasizes intuition over reason. Why is reason seen almost as a problem?
Yeah, this is a critical point philosophically. Reason isn't an ally here. It's seen as a prison guard, obscuring the individual, associated with ideas of power and domination. So the goal is to break the bonds of reason, to set free the original flame of intuition that breeds knowledge, allowing you to grasp divine beings' deeper truths directly. Intuition is explicitly called the fuel for growth. It's a call to shed those intellectual boxes that limit perception, embrace a more primal, immediate knowing.
And how are gendered forces viewed? And is Strigaria really a left-hand path?
Regarding gendered forces, nature is described as having a female orientation, a panorama of expressions, the boundless generative force. The male quality, contrastingly, is a violent force, almost an intrusion by fire, force, and direction that can adapt and transform that panorama. Lilith's presence as that powerful female archetype of self-transformation is therefore intrinsic to Strigonaria. Now, about the left-hand path label, while it's sometimes defined that way, the sources clarify there is no Satan as such in Strigonaria. If terms like Satan or Antichrist are used, they refer to magnetic forms of consciousness, archetypal forces, not a literal being or opposition to the Christian God whose mythology is largely just rejected as irrelevant to their system of self-deification. You know, this whole idea of integrating seemingly opposing forces brings up another key concept: dual observance. It makes you think. When we look at religious history, all the appropriation and exchange, how does dual observance offer a unique way to reclaim power, not just adopting new beliefs or hiding old ones? It really highlights how dynamic even subversive living traditions can be. How do the sources define this?
Dual observance is fascinating. It's defined as the intersection of orthodox and heresy, with the witch standing on the center point of power. It's not about picking a side. It's consciously occupying that space between. And in this view, right-handed practice, the more orthodox stuff, prayers, offerings, serves as an ingress, a gateway for harnessing power that can then be accessed in the heretical practice of the left hand. So fundamentally, it's about seizing power from gods, spirits, saints, the dead, for your own aid and use, transforming potential intercessors into mentors, merging saint and devil in the fires of communion. It's active, deliberate, appropriating power.
And this goes way beyond just simple syncretism, like masting of pagan goddess saint, where an old deity just gets a new name to survive. This describes true syncretism, where the dominant culture's spirits consume the less dominant, and fusion takes place. The example given is powerful. The Virgin of Guadalupe being called Tonantzin in Mexico, making her both Mother of God and the Mexican Earth Mother. That fusion is symbolized by the serpent under the foot of the Virgin, representing the inclusion and command of the legion of spirits that are now collectively known as saint. It's a total integration, a recontextualizing of power, not just a surface change.
That image is potent. The serpent underfoot is controlled power, not defeated evil. The example with St. Lucy really brings this dual observance to life. How does that work? Both orthodox and left hand.
It's a brilliant illustration. Orthodox veneration on her feast day, December 13th. Offerings, prayers to the patron of the blind, linked to light, healing, standard stuff, but worked with the left hand. St. Lucy becomes this highly mischievous saint, a young girl who enters riding the head of the dragon into the long night. She becomes the dying of the light Lucifera, embodying a darker, more primal aspect. In folk Catholic magic, her eyes, which she holds on a platter, symbolizing martyrdom or devotion, can be physically removed from an effigy to work the saint. That's direct bargaining, coercion even. Her eyes might be hidden from her until one's request is fulfilled, or put somewhere you need her to watch over, creating this binding relationship.
So on our feast day, a cunning practitioner would literally seize power with both hands, combining reverence and coercion.
Exactly. They seize power with both hands, offer rosaries, flowers, candles, the right hand practice, while simultaneously making oleum, oil, maybe with actual or effigy eyes, to seize the sight, applying it for health or for second sight in the eye of prophecy. This is described as raising the power of the right by utilizing a feast and worship as a means of harnessing that power on the left. Same principle applies to Good Friday, can be a left-hand celebration, seizing the power of Christ and the harrowing of hell. We see similar ideas in Pendelwitch lore, Swedish Easter witches, Palo, Krumbanda. True initiation, the sources insist, happens in this intersection of matter and spirit and only here. It's direct, visceral experience beyond doctrine.
This path, as the sources say, isn't for the weak of stomach, but the reward, becoming a shapeshifter, a walker between worlds, learning tongues of beasts, aligning with familiars, the genius loci, its deep, visceral engagement. Which brings us to the serpent path, transformation and self-mastery. Expert, what is the serpent path? What does it promise?
The serpent path is described as an eternal unfolding of the crossroad. Powerful metaphor, right? Means each moment becomes choice, and each choice leads us to the next intersection of what needs be with what is. This is the fertile ground of opportunity, where you find scattered seeds of the forbidden tree, hints of that forbidden knowledge, self-empowerment. It's on this path you hear the hissing of the first serpent, that blind dragon which offers us the poison chalice of our godhood. This blind dragon whispers of the potential of our own becoming, a radical transformation, maybe terrifying, maybe exhilarating, both perhaps.
It's a constant choice, a path towards a kind of personal godhood.
Precisely. If you're ready, you can slough our skins and ascend the very same tree, seeking the balance of the pole of verticality, implying reaching a higher state, balancing earthly and spiritual, otherwise. We remain as beasts like the serpent, with our bellies on the ground, confined by the gravity of the world, stuck in the mundane. That imagery is powerful. Speaks to this profound choice, this potential for spiritual evolution.
And this isn't just about ritual time, is it? It sounds like it demands total integration into daily life.
Total immersion. The sources state clearly, the work of the Sabbath is all-encompassing and should pervade all aspects of our life. All is grist for the mill, all is fuel for the athanor of transformation, meaning every experience, every challenge is raw material for inner alchemy. The warning is stark. Neglecting this connection makes magic just fantasy and escapism, or posturing and charlatanry, poisoned by self-deceit. It's a call to live the magic, integrate it fully into your existence, live your philosophy.
The ultimate goal is described as two-headed possession. Sounds incredibly intense. What does that actually mean?
It's this profound state of integrated consciousness, beyond normal dualities. The witch awakens a crossroad of rebellion and murder. Not literal violence, but a radical breaking of old structures, entering a dream state of two-headed possession where sensation informs but does not rule. It's a state where heresy meets the mirror mask of orthodoxy, where spirit and matter intersect, where shouts of we unify in the silence of I, where choice and awareness merge. That's the goal, this powerful, unified consciousness, transcending boundaries, merging individual will with cosmic awareness. You know, this section gives such a stark, practical, almost ancient view of our relationship with animals, with death. It really challenges those romantic ideas about magic, pushes us to see how deeply tied we are to the natural world, even its fiercest parts, which leads right into the formulary of the beast, working with blood and bone. Host, the sources say, to practice this, you must seek out death. What does that involve?
It's a very literal engagement with mortality, it seems. You have to seek out death, because bone collectors and necromancers can sense bones and remains. It's not just metaphorical. It implies a physical search, a heightened sensitivity to the presence of remains, human or animal. It's about directly engaging with the physical side of mortality, recognizing the power held in what's left behind.
And that leads to this potent sympathetic magic, you are what you eat. How's that understood here?
It's taken very literally, very profoundly.
Huh.
Eating venison, believed to grant the keen hearing, quick reflexes, and agility of a deer. Eating poultry provides keen eyesight or the ability to fly like a bird, crossing between the other worlds. The core belief. Eating absorbs the creature's powers, spirit, knowledge, making you more powerful, more wise. It's an intimate assimilation. The animal's qualities become part of the practitioner.
But that absorption comes with responsibility. Killing takes a spirit. How did older traditions show respect in that exchange?
The sources emphasize this reciprocity. Hundreds of old would let the spirit go and return the bones of a fish to the river it was caught in, and the bones of a deer to the forest of its death, as a sign of respect so the creature could be reborn again and eaten again. It shows this deep, sacred contract with the animal world, acknowledging the life-death cycle, the continuity of spirit, ensuring the source of power renews itself.
And this respectful yet very practical engagement has deep roots. The sources give striking examples of ancestors using animal parts ritually.
Absolutely. Our ancestors killed the deer used to make their ceremonial costume, the raven for a feathered cloak, the bear for hide to make drums, rattles. These weren't random acts, they were intentional. To imbue ritual items with the animal spirit, its attributes, they killed the swans buried in their sacrificial pits, likely for divination, otherworld connection. They killed the mare buried beneath the feasting hall to bless the space. They killed the hornless bull for its hide to wrap around their seer so he may dream of invader ships. These actions weren't casual. They were integral to their spiritual lives, a direct, visceral connection to the living world for magical purposes.
The practice of collecting bird tongues is especially potent in this light. What's the belief there?
Bird tongues are prized because birds are seen as messengers between worlds, farriers of souls. So, by collecting their tongues, your own tongue can supposedly speak prophecy and knowledge from the other side, and spirits can hear your call better. It's literally acquiring the bird's liminal communication skills. Ultimately, animals aren't just resources. They're guardians, protectors, and teachers, proficient in magic, shape-shifting, and communication with the supernatural world. They are familiars, our messengers and intermediaries, our dream companions, our omens. They're also the literal stuff of magic tools. Skulls and feathers on our altars, the skin of our drums and rattles, the antler and bone of our tool handles, the tooth and claw of our fetishes, the tallow in our candles, and the leather of our crane bags. They are essentially furred and feathered gods of the trees on our dinner plates and in our homes, deserving of our respect, reverence, and a change in our attitudes towards them. Wow. We have covered an extraordinary amount of ground today, journeying through Serpent Songs. From traditional witchcraft's liminal spaces to the profound wisdom of the Basque etxe and its complex deities. Through the evolution of English cunning folk and the precise practical Nordic Trolldom, we've really seen how these aren't just dusty relics. They're living, adapting currents, flowing through time, constantly reinterpreting themselves.
Absolutely. And what's fascinating consistently is that emphasis on liminality, those in-between zones where real power lies, the deep connection to spirits, ancestors, and the deeply personal, transformative nature of these paths. They offer such a powerful counterstory to conventional history, conventional spirituality, revealing a world where knowledge isn't just intellectual, it's gained through intuition, direct experience, and that willingness to step beyond ordinary boundaries.
Whether it's through the sacred hearth of that Basque home, the cunning man's evolving magic, the Trolldom practitioner's detailed work, or the Stragon's radical quest for self-divinity, these traditions really invite you to reconsider your relationship with the unseen, with your own identity, your place in this living world. They challenge us to look beneath the surface, to those deep, sometimes wild currents shaping human experience.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, maybe remember this. When the familiar map of understanding fails you, you have to re-examine the landscape itself. Look for truth not just on the main roads, but in those forgotten corners, those wild edges. The same door doesn't always lead to the same place. And maybe the true journey really begins right there, where choice and awareness merge in the silence of your deepest self, inviting you to forge your own path.